When I was in my teens, I liked to race bikes. For the first year or so, I took it pretty casually. This is a story of how I came to take it more seriously and work hard to get better. The second scariest part of BMX, bicycle motocross, is the wait before the race. In a single day at a big race, there could be over 200 races, and you have to shuffle around crowds of people on bikes to make sure you're in the right group to get on the starting gate at the right time. This was the scariest part of the race. This was the scariest part of the race. When your group is called up to go to the hill, you push your bike up against a 2-foot high metal wall, and you have approximately 45 seconds of waiting while the race before yours plays out. Then a 5-second countdown begins. Everyone begins to balance against the wall, shoulder to shoulder, with 7 other riders. The wall in front of you is pushed down pneumatically, and the race begins. This was a pretty special race for me. It was one of my first big races. I was 14 years old and had traveled halfway down California to Roseville, just north of Sacramento. It was extremely hot. I remember we had to let our bikes rest in the shade between races, because if we left them in the sun, the air in our tires would expand and explode. I waited about 30 minutes in this heat before it was my turn to race. 30 minutes in my heavily padded gear. I had put on my full-face helmet and got onto the gate. The gate in front of us crashed down, and me and the 5 other riders in my race started going our fastest down the hill, trying to get the early lead that puts you in a much better position to finish ahead. This was the worst part of the race for me. By the time we got to the first jump, there were probably 4 other people ahead of me. I would be playing catch-up for the rest of the race. I dipped down very low on the first 180-degree turn, and passed a person by the end of it, and another by the end of the first stretch of medium jumps. By the time I was going into the final turn, there were only 2 people ahead of me. As I went into the turn, I dipped down again to try and pass the person ahead of me. This time, though, the rider behind me, a boy I knew by the name Jack Rabbit, rode in below me, putting me between these 2 riders. Jack Rabbit began to ride up the turn, pushing me into the racer above me. I began to stumble on my bike. I tried to put on my brakes, but my pedals hit someone else's bike. I fell sideways down the turn, as the person who pushed me up the hill sped on. I had a ton of protective gear on, and I wasn't hurt, but I didn't get on the bike fast enough to get a good enough place to make it to the main. Obviously, I was frustrated. I had traveled so far to lose before the main race. But it gave me a goal. I wanted to win, and I wanted to beat the person who made me crash. And I wanted to get faster. Over the next year, I did everything I could to get faster and get an edge in the race next year. I spent entire days at my home track just practicing the start at the gate. Almost every day I didn't go to the track, I would work out my leg strength by practicing sprinting on my bike. Eventually the track wasn't open enough, so I built a small track in my backyard to practice on. Having a track in my backyard definitely made me a cool kid too, and a lot of people came out to ride on it. A lot of them didn't race, but they were really good at freestyle tricks, and I think I learned a lot from them just about how to increase my control over the bike. The last big thing I did to prepare was to get a new bike. My old bike was pretty old, it was too big for me, and relatively heavy. I was able to get a good deal on a shiny new silver bike, but I had to spend a lot of time babysitting and doing gardening for family members and neighbors to get it. After a year of training, I felt ready to finally go attend that same race again and achieve my goal. I knew the track already, and it was just a little bit less hot than last year. When I got on the gate again, all the confidence I felt before was gone. I was just as nervous as the year before. I don't think any amount of preparing could have prepared me mentally for these big races. This time, though, I qualified for the main and the second race. In the main event, when the gate shut down in front of me, I was able to power down that first hill, neck and neck with two other people, including Jackrabbit. This time, out of the second turn, I was in second place, ahead of Jackrabbit. I tried my hardest to catch up with the first in purse, but I wasn't able to, even though I was extremely happy when I finished. Second was a very big achievement for me. Even though I didn't win the race completely, I was extremely happy when I finished. Second was a very big achievement for me, and it was something completely out of reach last year. I was very happy with myself on the long drive back home. That had became so much faster and achieved a big goal for me. This was not the last time I would race. For years after this, I traveled California and Oregon doing these large races. I even won a few of them. But even when I won, it never compared to that one time I achieved my goal and got second place at Roseville.